Welcome to the Clyde FC podcast, brought to you by A State of Mind. We are back after the international break, and no, it wasn't because Graham Murray had got a last-minute call-up to the Scotland squad. We did get positive results after all. We are back, as I say, first time in, I believe, 3 weeks since our last live. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
As we look to cover a couple of results that have happened pre the international break that I mentioned, we will also look to go over what has been quite an eventful end to the transfer window for the Bully Wee, with some incomings and outgoings, quite high-profile ones at that. And we look ahead to tomorrow's match away to Peterhead. Busy show. Joining me tonight, I'm delighted to say that the aforementioned Graham Murray and the good half of myself, Lynn, is joining from the Casa de Shanks. So, a lot to discuss. I think the first port of call, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, we premiered our interview with the new chairman, Gordon Thompson. I think it would just be maybe a good time just to run through a couple of the points, maybe the key takeaways from that. I'll come to yourself, Graham, first. What were the kind of main kind of takeaways that you took from it?
Well, I think obviously I've known Gordon for a very long time, all the way back to our Castle bus branch days, where we were the kind of two younger guys on the bus, and while everybody else was going to the pub, the amazing Grace Dockery and Grace Donald would take me and Gordon away to some cafeteria somewhere to get some juice and make sure that we weren't up to too much trouble. And I think the one thing, knowing Gordon for as long as I have and knowing his passion for Clyde, that's the takeaway that I took from that. This isn't any kind of Bond villain ego trip that anybody's trying to put upon us. He's going to try his absolute hardest to make sure that the aims and objectives that he has for the club are brought to fruition. I can't think of anybody at the club, and listen, there's a lot of people that work very, very hard at the club, on the park, off the park, behind the scenes, volunteers. But Gordon's been doing it for an awful long time, from the inception of the CIC and everything that's came with that. But even when the club was in its darkest days, when himself and John Alexander were key in actually saving the club at the time. So he's always been a passionate Clyde fan, but he's also brought the very real expertise that he has. He's a CEO for third-party organisations, and he's brought that his experience in that area to the club through the community foundation, and his passion shone through on the interview. I don't think he shied away from any of the questions. I think it might not work, but I don't think it'll be for any lack of effort. So fingers crossed for him, and hopefully there'll be some responses to the email that came out this week about the working groups to see what we can do just to try and stop being as stagnant as what we are just now and try and move forward to where he sees a level. And I have to say I totally agree with him.
Yeah, Lynn, obviously we discussed it in the aftermath face to face, but would you care to share your opinions with the wider public on what you took from Gordon's thoughts and view for the future?
Yeah, I think just as a kind of upfront feeling about it all, it was just actually really refreshing that we actually had a chairman of the club come on and actually engage and communicate with the fans in this type of forum. It's obviously a brand new forum, obviously since last year's inception of it, but it's obviously the first time anyone's tried to kind of engage in that way with the fans, with it having been as popular as it is. So it was a great forum for him to kind of come on and actually get his message and objectives out there, and I thought they came across very well, and he spoke very honestly and candidly about what he wanted to do and what hasn't worked and what they want to kind of look at that isn't working, and what can fans help him do to meet these, because obviously he kind of wants to execute a kind of fans' vision as well. It's a collaborative effort. It's not just like exactly what he wants will happen. It's 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 what we all hope and envisage to happen that he's wanting to execute. So from that perspective, I found it really refreshing, and as Graham said, very, very positive as well. Like, it did come across, you could tell he's quite a passionate fan as well as being in the kind of the boardroom. So from that perspective, I hope it's obviously a lot more positive than kind of previous appointments, and we get a lot more kind of traction with some of the stuff he's wanting to implement this time. So yeah, I wish him all the best, and I do. I thought I'd love to kind of get that sort of thing on again on the podcast, just with even other. Also, we had David McPherson on before, kind of talking through things during COVID, etc. With him being the COVID compliance officer, etc. for the club. So yeah, things like that going forward would be great, just to get everybody engaged with the fan base. I think that can only be applauded.
Yeah, and we did get commitment from Gordon, I believe, even during the interview and in the aftermath, that he is very committed to making sure that we have representation on the podcast through the board coming on and taking questions, either live or pre-submitted. So we are very, I'm very hopeful that will be the case. Obviously, Gordon said it himself, the proof will be not in his words, it will be in his actions. And we can only hope that, as you say, Lynn, that we really get some traction, and whatever the future is, that it is a very, very positive one for the football club. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since we have discussed football and matters, so let's get on to that. And we will start, unfortunately, on a sour note, but it gets more positive as it goes on, so don't just press that window close button yet, guys. Nearly 3 weeks ago now, I can't believe it was that long. Falkirk 3, Clyde 0. Graham, I'll come to yourself. Your overall thoughts on it. I mean, was it just to be expected, almost?
I'm not sure if it was to be expected. The first thing I'll say is credit to Falkirk. I think since partially into last season, but since they've changed managers, okay, I think when Ray McKinnon was the manager there, it just didn't work. Okay, I'm sure Mr. McKinnon will admit that as well. And there was a transitional period with McCracken and Miller last year as well. They looked a better outfit last year, albeit in different circumstances. And the proof was here in it was a 3-0 game at Broadwood here, I believe. I tried to forget it. But it just appeared to me that the team that finishes above Falkirk will win the league. They are definitely a marked improvement from what I've seen. They're a big club. They probably shouldn't be at the level where they are, but they are there for a reason, deservedly so. But I do think this might be their year. I think, on the actual game, there was limited positives, okay, but I think the intention to frustrate was working for a period of time. It's not what I personally like to see. I personally don't like to see a Clyde team worry and focus more on what the other team is doing. Sometimes needs must though, and at that point in time, I think as well, we tried our hardest. Effort absolutely was there for everyone to see. But once the first goal came in, it was just a matter of, well, is it going to be 2? Is it going to be 3? And I think definitely the best team won. And there's going to be other teams go to the Falkirk Stadium and come away with a worse result than 3-0. And in reflection of the game as well, there's maybe other teams that are not going to frustrate Falkirk as much as what Clyde did up until the first goal went in. So it's one of these things where I genuinely feel that Falkirk are the best team in the league from what I've seen so far and from the other teams that we have seen. And, generally, if Clyde play against the better teams, we tend to perform better. But in my opinion only, we went out that day not to lose. And it's maybe something that we can learn from when we get them back at Broadwood.
Yeah, I feel like literally everything you were saying, I was just nodding away. Graham, completely agree. I don't have any complaints about the result. We obviously kept them to 0-0 for about an hour. But as you said, it was obviously very defensive, trying not to let them kind of break us down, not get an early goal or let us kind of put our backs against the wall kind of thing. And we did execute that game plan pretty well up until, that kind of early part of the second half. But once that defence was breached, it was almost like, they'd had a few chances even in the first half where they came close, and it was almost like they just needed that breakthrough. And once they did, it just seemed to be a bit easier. Albeit there was, some contentious things that happened in terms of some of the refereeing decisions and things, but overall, I still think, result-wise, it was a fair reflection on the fact that, for example, I don't think we had any shots on target, which was pretty disappointing to say the least. And that obviously is, I think, a reflection of what you said, Graham, that we obviously went out to almost not execute our own way of playing. We were obviously just trying to stifle theirs. So I think it's a fair reflection. The free kick they got, obviously I was a bit dubious about. I didn't think it was ever a free kick, but at the same time we didn't defend from that free kick, so I can't complain that it led to a goal. It was a well taken goal from I think about 30 yards out, or 30 yards out. And then for me as well, I don't think the penalty was a penalty, but again, over the piece from the chances they created, I do think it was the right result.
If anyone was doing a sweepstake as to when Lynn was going to criticise referees, it was 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
It has to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any Clyde fan that was there or even just watching the highlights package would have any complaints over the result. I dare say 3-0 was probably a fair reflection on Falkirk's dominance. They kind of came out the blocks as pretty strongly. I felt the first 15 minutes in particular, it was, God, we need to survive this or this could get very nasty. On the flip side, I would say that probably the last 15-20 minutes of the first half, we kind of held Falkirk at arm's length, and I don't think there was, other than one save from Mitch early on, Mitch never really had a great deal to do.
Sorry, I thought you were asking Graham that question. So I was waiting for Graham. I didn't hear you say Lynn. Sorry, excuse the domestic on the podcast tonight. I think that's a first. Yeah, but there was that kind of one positive kind of early on, but yeah, over the piece, I don't think we troubled them really too much. And what was really frustrating for me is that I think out of the two, David Mitchell was probably the better keeper between him and Much, but we never tested Much at all, excuse that pun. But that was probably the most disappointing thing for me, that I would have liked to have execute our own way of playing football, and we would like to kind of get it on the deck and actually trouble teams that way. But yeah, that is disappointing.
Yeah, as Mark Stewart's just saying in the comments, thanks for joining us, Mark, and Martin as well. I noticed that you do have a few comments. Thanks for joining us again, gents. Very well beat versus Falkirk, and we move on. Yeah, I don't think there's not an awful lot we can really add to the breakdown of the Falkirk performance. I would like to cover some of the contentious decisions and get overall opinions on them, and from Clyde fans alike. I still cannot believe the free kick decision in the build-up to the opening goal. Now, the one thing we have to caveat that with is the defending thereafter is not good enough. You cannot allow any player, let alone one as good as Paul Dixon, to run 30 yards to the edge of the box and get a shot away free. It's pretty criminal, even if we do feel the decision to award the free kick was likewise criminal.
Yeah, I possibly think as well that it wasn't a free kick, and there's possibly more room for discussion about decisions with some of our other games we're going to cover. But if they hadn't scored then, I think it was a matter of time before they would score from some other form of passive play. So these decisions, they always go against us and never go for us, but I'm sure there'll be occasions where Falkirk fans will maybe say, I feel the same thing about that as well. It's as blatant as, a poor decision as you'll get. However, I think, as Mark was saying there in the comments, well beat, move on. And we did. The one thing I would just like to caveat, the kind of Falkirk performance, ethos, style of play was, I think we did learn from it in the next game. So I think we draw a line under that. As I said, I think a lot of teams will go to Falkirk Stadium and be soundly beaten. But who knows? who knows? We get them back at Brotherhood and we actually try our own game. Who knows? And then we could possibly get some success on that and take it to the Falkirk Stadium the next game, and maybe it might be a title decider. But we'll see.
Do we read too much into the fact that we were missing two pretty key players, in particular Adam Livingston, Lynn, Aaron Splain also missing? We did have to shuffle the pack. It seems to be a kind of recurring theme, whether that be through injury or kind of trying different things. Adam had been very impressive against Alaba before having to go off injured. We had to kind of shoehorn Billy Mortimer in at left back. However, the general consensus of his performance at left back was actually pretty decent, considering. But as far as missing personnel, it was another two on the injury list that we can really ill afford, Lynn.
Absolutely. I think for me, Aaron Splain was a massive miss that day. I'd have loved to have seen again, because I think he's obviously quite key now to how we like to play football in terms of kind of passing on the deck, kind of spraying it out from midfield. So yeah, I think he was a massive miss that day, and it would be nice to have seen what would have happened had he been available. But yeah, unfortunately, obviously we're going to go through periods like this, especially with as well kind of the pandemic elsewhere as well, like kind of playing into matters like kind of weeks that have just passed too. Like, but I think we were well beaten, and as people have said, we need to move on. But yeah, it would have been good to have seen what he could have done against a Falkirk, because I think that's a real test. Because he's obviously done pretty well, kind of up to that point against maybe not as kind of full-time teams. So yeah, he was a key miss, and I don't ever kind of like to judge somebody on a position that's not their kind of natural position. But Billy Mortimer did all right, but yeah, I'd prefer to actually kind of judge him on where he's best suited rather than being shoehorned in at left back.
Yeah, just looking at some of the comments, so Mark is kind of saying even if we did have our best 11 on the pitch, it may not have made any difference. I think given the way Falkirk played, Graham, you touched upon it, they were just too good for us. And theoretically, they should be beating us. Anytime they play us, when you look at budgets, you look at especially aspirations for Falkirk, they're not just aspiring to get to the Championship. They want to be at the top table again, because that's where their fans, their board will absolutely see where they believe they should be.
I mean, I think in response to Mark, I think, well, how do you know? And with all due respect, other players on the park, we don't know whether that's going to be, whether it would make a difference if, Livingston was at left back and Splain was in the middle of the park, because that might have suited what Danny wanted to do in the game. Personally, I agree that I don't think on that day it would have made a difference. Okay, but we can't, Danny's the manager, we can't all kid on to be managers as well. So it didn't work out that day. We do try, but it's one of these things. We can't judge if our best 11 are going to be a match for Falkirk's best 11 until we have our best 11 and they have their best 11, and we see what happens then.
Yep.
Martin Brown wants to get on to talk about the Cove game, and we will, because it was a much more positive outcome, obviously, but it was a much more positive all-round performance. Falkirk was unfortunately the last appearance for Clyde, at least for the time being, for our then number one David Mitchell. David has signed, or made a deadline day move just following the Cove Rangers game to Hibernian. And I noticed that we have a Hibs fan in our comments, so please look after Mitch. He's a good guy, and you've got yourself a top keeper as well. We also have already made moves to replace Mitch, and we have signed Neil Parry. Now, we'll come to yourself first, Lynn. Your thoughts on David moving on to Hibs?
I was gutted at first when I'd kind of heard that sort of breaking, but fully he fully deserves an opportunity in full-time football. He's been an absolute saviour for us these past few seasons. So yeah, absolutely all the best to him, and I'm kind of gutted he's not going to be physically at the club to then do his hat-trick appearance on the podcast, because he's a great guy as well to boot. So yeah, I completely wish him all the best, and can only, like, he's obviously just trying to further his career, so there's no hard feelings about him going on and trying to develop himself that way, and completely just wish him all the best. And I think we have signed, probably like at the best possible time, someone else became available who is a more than able replacement, I feel, like, in terms of probably one of the better, like, alongside Mitch, like, lower league keepers that are out there. So in terms of that, if there was ever a time to lose Mitch, thankfully it was at a time when there was decent pedigree available to come in and replace him, replace his loss. So yeah, in that front, it feels sad, but equally quite excited to see Neil coming in and kind of putting in his stamp on the defence and see how that pans out. But yeah, I'm excited to see him in action. Hopefully tomorrow, which we'll obviously get on to.
Yeah, I'm disappointed to see Mitch go. He's a top guy, top keeper as well. Mark in the comments saying that we can't step in Mitchell's way. Best keeper that I've seen other than Derek Atkins, and that's pretty decent praise of that. Signed the next best keeper in the first and second league in Parry. I cannot agree more with that. I honestly think, as far as the stars aligning with Mitch moving on, Graham, coming to yourself now, we really couldn't have picked or handpicked a better part-time goalkeeper than Neil Parry to come in and replace him.
Yeah, absolutely, and I echo what yourself and Lynn were saying there about that's a great move for Mitch. Okay, coming at a good time for him in his life, but also in his career. He's, especially the first season that he was with us. Okay, I think we should highlight that particular season as being where he was exceptional for us. And I've said this. I've not seen Clyde. I mean, I remember Derek Atkins as well, and up until his leg breakdown at Ayr, he was bordering on being Scotland's number one. So he was that good. But yeah, we've seen some good goalkeepers. I personally liked Alan Martin for a season, but I think with Mitch, I've not seen a goalkeeper as commanding in a one-on-one situation as Mitch. Okay, in all my time, following Clyde, they just seem to have the striker's number every single time in that one. But yeah, it's a good move for him. Okay, it's a good move for Clyde. There was a fee involved. Okay, he's stepped up two leagues, and it's not a relegation battle. I know he's not going in there as a number one, but I'll give that some time. He'll probably play some cup games. It's a good move for him, a good time for him. But with Parry, if we were going to lose a goalkeeper of David Mitchell's quality, if not, I think we've matched it. Okay, and for the level that we play at, okay, I think we have matched a goalkeeper who's maybe not as commanding in a one-on-one situation as Mitch is, because I don't think anybody is, but he might have some advantages over Mitch in other areas at this level. So very, very excited to see what he does bring and what he brings to the defence in front of him. And fair play to the young lads against Cove, and we'll come on to that as well. Stepping in, we sign a goalkeeper. He tests positive for COVID, in the morning of the game. It's typical Clyde, but we got through it. But yeah, in terms of Mitch, all the very best to him. I hope he does actually fulfil his promise and come back on for his hat-trick appearance. Okay, and yeah, at least at this point in time, we know that he's not like maybe some players have left in the past, and you question that is that a step up. It's not. It's definitely a step up from him. So fair play to him. Yeah,
and I do. I think he'll do more than well if he ever is called upon at Hibs. I just think nothing seemed to faze him. Nothing seemed to faze Mitch. So yeah, absolutely. If you are watching, I hope you are still watching Mitch. We're still friends, hopefully. All the best to you, and don't be a stranger at Broadwood if you are ever free on a Saturday. I'm sure the fans will welcome you. Just on Neil Parry, obviously you touched upon Graham. He did miss his what would have been his debut, so hopefully he will be available for tomorrow. Joshua Bradley Hurst stepped in at the last minute against Cove, and I have to say, for a league debut run, it was very, very, very impressive from the young man.
Yeah, obviously what you were saying, Graham, about Mitch being good and commanding on one-on-one situation, I thought, and it can always different way, Joshua did very well in that sense. He was very, very commanding of the box, and when called upon, made, one particular key save that I thought was just, phenomenal. He had a brilliant game and came in, and obviously you're kind of watching from the sidelines most of the time when you've got Mitch as your number one, but he's obviously learned from watching the best, and he's been a more than able kind of step in for obviously then Neil not being available that day. So yeah, I thought it actually, from obviously us kind of letting his mum in at the front door, I think she would have been very, very delighted at his performance that day, having, kind of stepped up sort of almost last minute. So yeah, they played an absolute blinder and helped us obviously kind of stay in front in that game. So yeah, fair play to the boy. I hope he's obviously not... he's going to kind of use obviously Neil coming in again as somebody that again he can still learn from, and again step in when we needed, because he's shown that he's a more than capable stepping in when he is needed. So I thought he was absolutely cracking.
Yep, there was a first lighting issue. Going away doing a couple of star jumps, getting himself fit and turning the lights on at the same time.
25 minutes, that's not bad.
That's not too bad, is it? Not too bad at all. Martin Brown in the comments as well, just saying GBH, which I've got to be careful how I phrase that, or it turns into a crime. Played a blinder though against Cove, and he did. He really did play well. I'll be honest, I was expecting him to be a lot busier, Graham. I'm not sure about yourself. I thought ahead of the game, Cove, I think they'd scored 5 the previous week, albeit I don't think some of the kind of write-ups were saying that they were maybe a touch lucky, but at the same time, the firepower that they have, we just conceded 3 away to Falkirk. A lot of fans, probably quite rightly, were concerned ahead of playing Cove and expecting whoever was between the sticks to be a lot busier than we probably actually were.
Yeah, I think you probably need to check the sources of the reports for the Cove games right enough to see just how accurate they were. But he didn't really have much to do, and that's just the facts. Okay, they've got 2 tremendous strikers at Cove with Megginson and McAllister. One very, very experienced, and the other one's lethal. And we managed for the majority of the game, barring some questionable decisions that we'll come on to, we really weren't troubled with them as well. Now, with a young goalkeeper playing behind the 3 centre-halves on the day, but the 3 centre-halves combined superbly to protect the goalkeeper, possibly. But when he was called into action, he did, to me, what was expected as a goalkeeper. I think if any of the shots that he saved had went by him, it's maybe a soft goal we've lost. The crosses that came in, he commanded. He's a smaller guy, certainly smaller than Parry. But he commanded his area well. But I genuinely agree with you, Paul. I don't think that we were, until some of the decisions that went against us in the second half happened, we were not seriously troubled by the 2, possibly the best, strikers, apart from Goody, in the division. So that's credit not only to the young goalkeeper, because I keep trying to go to call him Phoebe Waller-Bridge, so I'm not going to do that. But apart from that, the 3 central defenders in front of him as well had their part to play. And I wasn't obviously on after the Alloa game, but I thought Scott Rumsby stood up superbly that day to Connor Salmon. But I thought Rumsby, Els and Ballatoni combined, I thought were exceptional against 2 very, very good strikers in Cove. And obviously, we'll come on to some of the decisions that mean that they're not available, or one of them is not available tomorrow. But they protected the goalkeeper, but the whole ethos of the team meant that we were, defending from front, because it's all very well to say that the young keeper wasn't really tested, but neither was their keeper. We took our chances at the right times in the game and managed the game really, really well after that, until the kind of squeaky bum time at the end of the game.
I've kind of put it down as a cliche, because we love a cliche at the Clyde podcast, guys. It was the old game of 2 halves, where I think for the first half, on the whole, we were the better team. Cove started a wee bit more positively. We did have that one, I believe it was the one save you might be talking about, the back post from Heatherlin from young Josh. But other than that, nothing really from Cove. We got a pretty early goal as well. Now, are we going to give Conrad the benefit of the doubt? Are we going to say it was a Xavi-esque defence splitting pass, Lynn, or was it put it in an area and hope that it reaches Goody?
No, I'm gonna give him credit. I think it was a really good pass and a good incisive pass, and he saw it and executed it well. I'm not going to take that away from him. So yeah, no, I thought it was a really, really well worked goal, and they combined well together to obviously get Goody that goal. So, and it was good to obviously see him get a double again in that game. So both well taken goals. Obviously, kind of he's broaching near his 100 now. So I think it was good to kind of see another 2 racked up that day towards that. And obviously there's others that we'll talk about as well that then kind of racked up again. But yeah, I think he took his goals well that day, and obviously that pass, obviously just set that one up beautifully for him. So yeah, that was definitely intentional.
Yeah, you've got your first person disagreeing with you, Lynn, and I don't know if it's Graham just yet, but Mark Stewart is saying he believes it was a punt up the field that got lucky. But he's
Mark Stewart always disagrees with me, so it's fine. I'm fine with that.
So do I,
I think it's because just because maybe I'm just a happy clapper. Like maybe that's all that I am, and I try to kind of see the positives in everything that everybody does.
Yeah, so I mean, it was either way. It was very, very well taken from Goody, and it's the type of situation that you want him in every time. If he's through in that situation, there's going to be one outcome. I thought before the second goal, I believe he also hit the post. Great run from Ross Cunningham cutting in. I want to actually just call out Ross Cunningham's overall performance against Cove. I thought he was sensational at times.
Yeah.
Really, really good. His work rate was incredible, Graham. But he backed it up with more than a fair share of bit of skill in there as well.
Well, he's got that. There's no doubt he's got that. I think he's still a fairly young player, but he's came from a decent pedigree. He was, when he left Hamilton, their top goal scorer in the top division. So the boy's obviously a player. I would like to see more of what we got against Cove on a more regular basis, but you're going to get inconsistency at this level. So yeah, I thought he was excellent, along with everybody else. Sometimes you can look, and I'll be controversial with this. You look at the Alloa game, you're looking at a really good team performance, and to me, the worst player in the park was Goody up until he scored his first goal, and then he was unbelievable after that. But yeah, the performance against Cove was extremely, extremely good as a whole. But if we can get Ross Cunningham playing like that on a more regular basis, then he's obviously an asset to us. But the one thing I'll put my tuppence in about the Ballatoni pass. You would like to think that a striker as intelligent as Goody will tell a midfielder, or even Conrad Ballatoni has played for a few seasons, okay, and he's got quite a good range of passing on him. So you'd like to think that in training they have worked upon, Cove maybe play a high line, stick the ball in that area. Conrad's, if you get the chance, I'll be onto it in a flash. It was a goal, never a punt up the park. But yeah, Ross Cunningham, if we can get that kind of performance on a more regular basis, absolute asset. Okay, I'd just like to see him chip in with a few more goals.
Yeah, he was unlucky that day with the shot that hit the post. We did get what turned out to be the killer second goal just before half time. Came from a wee bit of a slip up in the middle of the park. I can't remember who it was who gave the ball away, but get the ball taken away by Goody. Broke through. Initial shot saved. Now, I didn't notice it at the time. It was only in the replay, but the drag back from Goody is just delightful. The commentary by our very own John Boyce is actually, I don't want to give him too big a head because you know what he's like. But his commentary on it was brilliant, where he kind of said to Kyle Gooley, "Hey, do you want this? Nah, you're not getting it." Drags it away from him, throws it home. Just so typically Goody, the finish line, when maybe others at the League 1, League 2 level, the initial shot saved, they just want to get another shot away as quickly as they can, potentially scuff it or whatever. He's just get that piece, that extra kind of thought process. Take that extra touch. Don't panic. I'm going to score anyway.
Yeah, and that's why he's one of the best, like in our league, if not, a couple of leagues, even the league above. He's just got that touch of class and quality about him that, when he's on his day, like he just has the composure and intelligence to do stuff like that. And he just knows to take that extra touch and stay calm and composed, and he'll get that second opportunity and, then slot it home without kind of blasting at it. Just kind of taking your time and slotting it away. It's why he's as good as he is, and why, as touched upon earlier, he's so close to the 100 goal mark now. Like, he's just that clinical when he's on his day.
Yeah, so he is at 98, albeit I think it's now in the record books is 97, because there was the one goal against Queen's Park that eventually the result was given as a 3-0 defeat. Now, we'll let everyone argue amongst themselves. Does he need 2? Does he need 3? Regardless, at the moment, one good thing is in the past 2 home games, he scored 4 in 2 games. He scored 4 in the last 3 games, if you want to look at it that way as well. Overall, in post the Broomhill debacle, shall we call it that, the form hasn't been too bad. Now, has it been free-flowing football all the time? No. Have we, say for the second half in particular, of the Cove game, where we had a 2-0 lead, we tried to protect it. We did that on the whole. We've taken 6 points from 9 against Alloa, Falkirk and Cove. Now, if you were offered that before a ball was kicked, Graham, you would have absolutely taken it.
Yeah, 9 would have been better. 7 would have been better. But it's one of these things where it's a ridiculously tight league, and I think every single club, every podcast, if they've got any, every match report apart from Coles, will tell you that it's a tight league. So, you worry about the games you feel you should be winning, and you're more relaxed about the games you feel you might have little or no chance against. And this is where days like the Alloa game, the Cove game, and even the last minute draw up at Montrose just feel that little bit better, that little bit more special when the drive, either home from Broadwood or back from Montrose, feels as good as it does, because Falkirk possibly aside, not seen Queen's Park yet, we'll judge them on next week's podcast, but I think as well there's so much competition where I still personally believe we've not got a best 11 out in Park yet, but we're losing Ali Love. We have been missing him for a while. He's a key player, whether it's playing as a number 10, whether it's playing out on the left, whether it's playing as a sub. He's a key squad player. Barry Cuddihy is a key squad player. Aaron Splain has been one of the finds that we've got from the guys that came in through the summer. And we've also got Jonathan Page, who hasn't really kicked a ball for us. So I don't know how good this team is, or how, what we should be looking at in terms of realistic objectives for the season. That will be determined, through when we do get a squad back. We've lost, one of our key players, one of the spine, but we replaced it and we've prepared the spine, if you like. So we're looking good in that regard. We probably have to look at and judge when we have that 11 playing, and when we then have that 11 playing in the way that Danny wants them to play. So in terms of form, it's decent. I would like more points, okay, but as I said earlier on, I think Falkirk is always going to be a hard game regardless, and I don't have any issues with the style of play. I don't have any problems with it either. It's one of these things where if you've got somebody like Goody who can stick the ball in and score 2 goals, it's going to win you most games in this division. He's done it twice, so in the last two home games, I'm happy with that. I don't see any Clyde fan that shouldn't be happy with that. Any Clyde fan that should be worried about a style of play. If it's 3 points, it's 3 points. One of the most successful seasons that we had was under Billy Reid. It wasn't the best football to watch, but it worked. And we finished in a higher division at a higher level. So we have to be sometimes realistic and think that we're not going to blow teams off the park every single time we step on there and win 4-5-6-0. It's not going to happen. But if we fight and we play for the jersey and we get our best team out there, or at least the majority of them with some options on the bench, then I think, we're good enough to be looking up the way rather than down the way.
Yeah, and I think we're not going to sit here and say everything's been great. I think we've called out the bad when it has been bad, and by God, there's been some bad performances this season. I mean, we touched upon it, Broomhill, the Dumbarton opener, both shockers, absolute shockers. But I think even the second half against Cove, where we were very, very much against it, we were backs against the wall, what gave me real heart, Lynn, was the actual heart and fight and determination to hold on to the 2-goal deficit initially, and then unfortunately we'll come to the penalty decision because I can see Graham is itching to get his teeth in there. It was a very, very contentious penalty decision that made it a wee bit nervier than it probably should have been.
Yeah, I thought everybody just left it all out there on that day, and defended like their lives depended on it. It didn't really, obviously, but it was good to see that heart and the passion like back again, because sometimes that's felt what's been missing every now and again. Like, not all it's definitely not been all the time. Most of the time you are seeing that everybody's trying, but like you actually seen like they wanted it, there was passion, and they were trying hard for the jersey, as you'd said, like, and they just left everything out there and had no regrets, obviously walking off, like, because they'd given it their absolute all. Sorry, that must have been quite a few cliches I put in there, but they absolutely did. I think they were kind of hard done by some of the decisions, which again, Graham you'll get to talk about. But yeah, they even with that in play, we still didn't let that get to us. We just kept the composure and saw it out, and I felt we saw it out really comfortably. I don't think it was even felt like it was going to be in doubt. It was almost quite a comfortable kind of win in the end. I didn't feel like it kind of troubled us too much, like even the kind of penalty decision. So I was still quite confident we were going to get the win just with how we've been playing. But I suppose with Clyde, you sometimes never know when it's that kind of margin. But you never count us out. But like in terms of performance and how we played, like, they absolutely the 3 points, and they absolutely like worked their socks off, for another cliche.
I thought you were about to say something else there that nearly made his goalpost watershed. No, it got a little crazy at the end. I think we can all agree on that. The last 5 to 17 minutes, because of the 9 minutes injury time or whatever it was that ended up getting added on. The penalty decision, I've watched it. I don't know how many times I watched it before the show tonight, just to make sure that I hadn't mistaken myself, Graham, with it. But it's a coming together at best, isn't it?
It's not a penalty. It's simple as that. It's not a penalty. And I remember, speaking to you at the game with the unusual water breaks that they had. I just noticed all the Cove players surrounding, because they were claiming for absolutely everything. Now, I don't particularly like a team that will badger a referee into making decisions, and I don't particularly feel that it might have made that decision any more clear cut for the referee. But I did notice at the water break, the more experienced players were all round the referee. They weren't taking the water. That's what they're supposed to be doing, and they were all just badgering the referee because they hadn't received penalties for things that didn't happen. So it was one of these things where I said, the next contentious decision, he's going to give something, and he did. That's when we heard Mitch Megginson scream when he went down, and he gives a penalty, and it's just wow. And at that point in time, as I alluded to earlier on, we'd pretty much comfortably, dealt with two very good yet experienced strikers without really any troubling of the goalkeepers or the defence. There wasn't really much in terms of a threat, but they get a goal back from absolutely nothing, from a little bit of intimidation of a referee in a water break, only at a level possibly, in my opinion only, Paul, just before you get the podcast into trouble. But on that basis as well, it's one of these things where, yeah, it does become nervous. I would slightly disagree, Lynn, and obviously you were sitting close to me as well. You were not comfortable after that penalty went in for the remainder of the game. So it's one of these things where things like that were taken out of our hands to make it more uncomfortable than it actually should have been. I think if we don't get that penalty, doesn't get given, we've got the ability then to hit in the break with Goody up top. Anything can happen, and it's a lot more comfortable than it ended up being, but not in this occasion through any rash penalty decisions that we might have given away correctly. I'm thinking about Rumsby up in Montrose, needless, okay. But these decisions that we behaved ourselves, we were diligent, we were confident, we were focused on our task. Okay, you're going to get decisions where, and that's your turn to run about this time, Paul, where you're going to get these decisions go against us. It's how you respond to it, and after that, that's lovely seeing Paul doing star jumps. But yeah, after that, I felt there was no issues at all with anything apart from the other contentious decision that went against us. But I think the game was gone by that point in time. But again, we're looking at, and I'm going to add one in to that as well, Paul, before I get off the kind of referee kind of side of things. We've actually got a very, very experienced player who puts our centre half in the knee of our goalkeeper and gets him taken off with a severe head knock and then complains about the decision. We don't have that kind of person in our squads, okay, that has, like it or not, the guile and experience to influence and get decisions. We just don't have it. Maybe we're too good for our own sakes at times as well. We don't have that kind of player in our ranks. And yeah, I don't personally have a problem with it if it's going to be a more honest group of players. But it also did contribute to the decision right at the end of the game where Big Matty Elson gets sent off for what was a foul. However, two things that I would say: McAllister was miles offside, and also the ball, in my opinion, without getting the podcast into trouble again, Paul, in my opinion, was clearly going through to the goalkeeper. So something else that didn't affect us on the day, but will certainly affect us tomorrow.
Yeah, just on the offside element, I have watched it back and he is onside. However, I absolutely agree that I don't think it to class it as a clear goal scoring opportunity when he's not in control of the ball. And am I being harsh in saying that that's just not a goal scoring opportunity?
It absolutely wasn't. Where the ball bounces, like in the vicinity of the keeper, how close that was to him. Even as you were saying, how questionably offside, we'll give him the offside. We'll give him the benefit of saying he was onside, right? But given how questionably on or offside he was from that position, he wasn't getting that ball. So it's definitely not a goal scoring opportunity. And for me, therefore, yes, it is a foul. He has pulled him back. That's no doubt about that. But it's 100% a yellow and not a red. So, and it is a decision, as Graham said, that's affecting us now for tomorrow. And it's one of those annoying ones where you can't appeal because he's obviously, it's one of those really frustrating ones because, you want to, but ultimately it's probably not going to be like fruitful in any way because he's obviously made a decision and, they're not kind of necessarily going to overturn something like that. But yeah, for me, definitely only a yellow. It's never a red.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think any appeal there would just be a donation to the Christmas Night Out Fund.
If it's allowed.
Graham, you did touch upon it. It was a mad cup. I think it was in the space of 2 minutes that we lost two of our three centre halves from that particular match, with Scott Rumsby going off with what was a very, very nasty head injury. We did very briefly speak to Scott after the game whilst he was waiting to go and get checked up. He was a wee bit dazed. He had quite a pretty sizable cut to his forehead. I believe he has had stitches. He's had a couple of weeks now at least to let that heal. So we are missing Matty Elston, but hopefully we do have at least Scott Rumsby back. Numbers wise, we're going to be very, very light in the centre half position. So Graham, bring your boots.
That's what you kind of said, Graham. Like, I'm really disappointed that wasn't punished. Like, it was a blatant push on him that's taking him into Bradley Hurst, and he's obviously, like, you know, he said he felt a really hard connection, so he knew it was like a knee or a thigh or something that, you know, he'd clattered, and just absolutely obviously gave himself a good concussion as well as the nasty gash. And you hate seeing it because it's just not sportsmanlike at all. But you see so many, you see Harry Kane sort of doing similar, you know, and it's just something that never really goes punished. So and that frustrates me, because that absolutely should have been a yellow for him, because he's endangered the player. Like, there's no doubt about that, seeing obviously what happened to him. So he's not getting the what we're obviously affected with decisions and punishments. Like, he's obviously not going to be affected by that at all, like, you know, anytime soon, because he didn't receive punishment for it. So you just wish the referees would actually clamp down on that.
I think as well, just to touch on what you're saying, I think the thing that annoyed me the most was he was moaning about it. But yeah, we don't have that kind of character in our team, okay, and I'm quite pleased about that. But from what I've seen from the Clyde website, obviously we will be available tomorrow, so those Haribos must have done the absolute trick for them.
Yeah, and speaking of donations to Christmas night out funds, I think that Scott was, I think, more concerned in the aftermath of getting another fine for giving away another penalty. I think that's his third in the league this season. The ref seem to have it in for him, or maybe just needs to be a bit sharper. That will let that be a discussion point. Just call in as a skip. Okay, so the home form has been pretty decent of late. We've won the last two. Both 2-1. If we're going to reap the benefits of this, Roland, we need to do something about this away form. And in the past couple of years, our away form has been questionable at best.
And, you know, we've also obviously said before that we're almost too guilty of doing really well against, you know, the teams that are going to perform well and be right up at the top end of the table. Like, we get decent results against them, but see, against the teams that are about us in the table, like your Peterhead, your East Fifes, etc., they're the ones that we seem to struggle. And sorry, in Dumbarton, if I put that one in there as well, is they're the ones that we, you know, aren't consistent enough in picking up the points. And I think that's what hurt us last season. So yeah, it would be really good to obviously kind of push on from the Cove and Alloa results and actually go to Peterhead. And, you know, because I think they'll obviously be like ourselves. Obviously, they're currently languishing bottom, albeit obviously early on in the season. But, you know, it'd be good to, whilst they're, you know, on that kind of poor run at the moment, that, you know, we'd go up there and actually kind of take something from them again, like we did that kind of Tuesday night last season. And then obviously the kind of 2-1 a couple of seasons ago. Be nice to kind of come away with 3 points from there, because it's not one that we normally tend to travel too well to. But yeah, I think we need to take points from teams like Peterhead, who are going to finish around us, to actually give ourselves any opportunity of finishing sort of that mid-table, or push for any sort of promotion playoffs, as Gordon had said was maybe one of the aspirations for this season. So yeah, we need to do it.
Yeah, I think the first thing for me is you become the best of the rest. So you finish top of the part-time teams if we can. There's some pretty big spending part-time teams in there. You've got Montrose and Alloa within that bracket. They are very, very good teams as well, albeit we've taken 4 points off the two of them so far this season. So, but yeah, it's going to Peterhead now. The 2 victories you've talked about there, Lynn, are our only 2 victories at Peterhead in league duty since Peterhead came into the league. Now, we really do need to improve on that. There's been maybe the odd game where we maybe could have picked up more. I look at the game where Goody had the red card. Was that 1 each draw, I think, that day?
Yeah.
Maybe in a different day we might have snuck a win, but it's been a place that we just do not do well at, Graham.
It's historically not been, but I remember that I think the first game that we actually played them was a game where myself, my dad drove up, and it was one of the kind of international break weekends that they decided to play the game. And it ended up being 1-1, and it was carnage. Michael Daly scored a penalty for us to get a late equaliser, but we played them off the park. And I've seen us play Peterhead off the park a couple of times up there and get no rewards for it. The one thing I would say about tomorrow's game, and it's probably a bit of self-worry, is that I don't know anything about Peterhead. It used to be they've got McAllister playing for them. They've got they had the boy on loan from Aberdeen. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But they had players that you knew about, that knew could hurt you, and they also had a very, very established management team up there as well. And I'm just a wee bit concerned, one, that we're going up there and there's fans there tomorrow, so you have all the banging of the boards behind the goal, which just drives me crazy. But I don't know enough about Peterhead to be worried or confident. It's one of these ones where, we'll miss Matty Eldson, okay, but are we going to play this in the front foot? We should, in my opinion. They're bottom for a reason so far. Things have not clicked for them, obviously, to this point. However, we've got to go up and catch them at the lowest point just now, because they've got an experienced management team who can look at trying to fix whatever's not worked for them to this point. So I'm hopeful that, with a good ammunition of Bridie's on the way up, that we can enjoy the game tomorrow based on, going up there and not worrying too much about what they do, concentrating on what we do.
That's your catchphrase, isn't it? Robert West made a comment a wee bit earlier, and I'm just going back to read it, where he says that he still genuinely believe that are better than some of the results have shown so far. The defence is getting tighter, and we just need a wee spark. Tomorrow could and hopefully does see that spark kind of come to fruition and really be the kind of kickstart. Let's push on, get another point. 3 points.
3 points.
And we're sitting on 13 after six games?
6, 7.
7 games. So I mean, it's not a bad return at all. So yeah, that's for everyone that's going up. We've got a couple of kind of things to call out, and one of that is obviously to do with the away fans. Just get behind the boys as we have been doing, and let's see what happens.
Danny's even called for that. Yep.
Peterhead are currently bottom for a reason.
Yeah.
They will be looking at us as well, saying, "Yeah, we've got a great record against them up here. Let's give them another bloodied nose and send them back down the road." So let's see what tomorrow brings, and hopefully it is another 3 points for the Billy. So just as I mentioned there is a bus running for anyone that wishes to go. I believe there still is limited space on the bus. It is completely free, so all you need is your match day ticket and your ticket for a burger or pie in the ground. The bus itself is absolutely free, so if you do wish to go, get in touch with Scott Nichol. His details should be on the website article, I think, where Danny was talking about the support and trying to get up to the game. A few extra things just to call out. The limited edition prints from our very own Craig Black, they are still on sale at the club shop. Choose your favourite. It's signed and it's printed, signed by the player in question. There's some belters in there. Ali scoring against Thistle amongst many. As you can tell, that's the one I'm getting. Please do check them out before they're gone. They are limited edition, as I said. Looking ahead to next week, Hospitality versus Queen's Park. You can get this for £45 per head, or £40. I'm trying to do this without reading it. £40 if you're paying with your season card. It's a maximum of 10 people at a table. For this, you'll get your entry into the match, you'll get a pre-match meal, and a paid bar up until kick-off and after the match as well. Not only that, you'll get a meet and greet with Danny. He comes up and does a nice wee Q&A with the folks in the area lounge. And also on the day, you've got 3 legends in the area. You've got Andy Willock, where am I? Robert Riley and Freddie joining us as well. And on top of that, the 3 gentlemen that we have just mentioned there. Keep your eyes peeled on our socials, because we've got something a wee bit special coming up with those gentlemen too. So perfect timing. That takes us up to the hour, guys. So it's time to wrap up for another week. It's great to be back. Thank you very much, Lynn and Graham, for your time. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. It's been great. There's been some great chat on Clyde legends between a few Celtic fans and Martin and Mark in the comments. It's been great just reading the back and forth. We'll be back next week, and hopefully we'll be celebrating another 3 points, and we should hopefully have a nice wee guest on too, and keep your eyes peeled out for that. So until then, come on the Billy Wee.
Come on the Clyde.